What's up guys, welcome back to a new video on East Coast Manga. Today I want to do something kind of like I've done before, maybe a couple weeks ago. It's not exactly a reading log because it's not everything I'm reading necessarily like up to date and stuff like that, but it's just been some series that I've been really enjoying reading the last couple weeks or so, last month and a half maybe. And yeah, some stuff that have stood out and I just want to talk to you guys about. So the first series I want to talk about, which I've been really enjoying, and I've caught most of the volumes except for one, we have Terraformars. Terraformars! Wow! So this series is really cool. We focus on a bunch of characters. Basically what has happened is Earth has become, I believe, overpopulated to the point where at some point in, I think, the early 2000s, it might have been the United States or it might have just been a bunch of different countries in general, essentially kind of like NASA. So essentially in Terraformars, we look at this futuristic type of world where I believe it's like the 26th century, the Earth is totally overpopulated, and there was a mission to try to get Mars to be habitable. And the way they describe it is very interesting. Essentially, they're putting down moss all throughout Mars, and they're also putting a bunch of cockroaches on Mars because they're able to survive on Mars or whatever with the moss, and they're able to eat that or something. But essentially, they're trying to populate it so much to the point where I believe they're trying to heat the planet up with the, dark roaches and the moss and whatever. And as they heat it up, there'll be, there's a bunch of science stuff in there with the ozone and stuff like that. But in short, they're trying to make Mars inhabitable. And by doing that and leaving those cockroaches on Mars for an extended amount of time, a long time, these cockroaches have developed straight into these humanoid, just insanely strong, insanely scary creatures. And let's just say the way that we look at cockroaches on Earth, and the fact that they're nasty, they're gross, we kill them on sight, that's how cockroaches look at humans on Mars. And I'm not gonna say this is a spoiler because it's not even technically in volume 1. They just mention it, but it's not like we don't see it happen necessarily. But the first mission that they sent, or the first ship they sent up to Mars after, the extended amount of time, they had realized that Mars should be inhabitable now if, taken with the right precautions and whatever they do on Earth to get you suited up for it. So they want to send people to Mars to see, okay, what has happened? Is everything still good? Let's eradicate the roaches, let's get rid of the roaches, and let's start kind of building and getting stuff up there. And the first ship, the first ship that went up, every single person was killed. There was no survivors with that ship. They got absolutely torn to pieces. Volume 1 introduces us to the second ship that was sent up, which I believe was maybe like 40 years later or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. And that's where volume 1 takes place. And it is, this manga, man, it is super brutal. Essentially what the humans have to do to be able to fight these creatures that have just absolutely just developed into these crazy things is they actually like mess with their own genes in terms of these experiments and stuff, and they're able to essentially inject like insect DNA into their bodies and take not the full form of these insects, but they're able to use some of these same things that insects have. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's really cool. I would highly recommend checking out some, chapters online if you guys haven't picked this up yet. It is technically on hiatus at 20 volumes. I don't know the backstory of if it's going to come back or what the creators, what's happening with the mangaka. It is done by, I believe, so it's two different people. One person's doing the story, one person's doing the art. I'm only 4 volumes in, and volume 2 already had such a twist that made me so mad. I was so angry, and something, a manga that brings out emotions like that, it definitely does pique my interest and just makes me want to keep reading. The next series, which I believe there's 13 volumes out, there is a part 2 that's coming out soon, and I've read 2 volumes and just, I am hooked. I am legitimately hooked for all of the right reasons. And this story is World's End Harem. I know a lot of you guys thinking, oh my gosh, harem manga, ecchi manga, adult manga, whatever. Yes, it's technically all of those things, but let me just stop and say, this story has me hooked. And I cannot say that about a lot of other ecchi manga. Not that I've actually read that much, to be fair. This one, man, you could legitimately remove all the ecchi stuff from it, all the adult content from it, and the story would legitimately still be very, very interesting. It's not ecchi with story, it's a story with some ecchi. And that could be why some people dislike this manga. If you look at some of the reviews, there will be some people who are complaining that, oh, it didn't have enough of this, or enough of this, or enough of this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of chilling. I don't think it needs all that. And like I said, I'm only 2 volumes in, so there's still another like 11 volumes or somewhere around that I need to read. But as simple as possible, basically our main character had this this is in the future, had this genetic disease or this disease where there was no cure for it, so they put him into cryosleep while they worked on getting a cure. It's not just him, it's a lot of other people they put in cryosleep, and it was going to take about, I think, somewhere between 3 and 5 years. I believe he wakes up kind of around the same, like 3 or 5 years later. He finds out, yes, they did find a cure, they were able to fix his original illness, but there was this virus called the MK virus, which took out 99.9% of males all around the world. Every single country. So now it is this female-dominated world, but not dominated, but it's just like all females pretty much. And the only males that are still alive were a handful that were put into cryosleep, as the same with him, who never got the disease, who you do meet 2 of them by the end of volume 2. And then you also have a bunch of males who were put into cryosleep during when the virus was happening, so they are technically infected by the MK virus, but they are in cryosleep, so if there's a cure for the virus, they can be worked on and saved. So the basis of the story outside of that is obviously the world needs to be repopulated, and the best way that they can see possible is with the males who are alive and don't have the virus. But our main character, he's not about that. He's not interested in that. There's one person who essentially he made a promise to before he went into cryosleep, or not even a promise, but basically the love interest that he is interested in, and she was also a scientist. You find some stuff in volume 1 or 2 which is very interesting about the MK virus and maybe the origination of it. And instead of impregnating anyone, the only person he wants is the love interest, his friend, who also happens to be a scientist who may have some information which could be very, very important. So there definitely is some ecchi, some lewdness, and it's mostly women obviously trying to get with him and trying to repopulate the earth. But like I said, he's not about that, so men staying strong. The next volume, which we'll just stay in the degenerate type of category, and to be fair with you, I didn't even know how bad this series gets, but we have Chained Soldier Volume 1. This is a very recent release by Yen Press. This is a rap volume. It's not quite as graphic or lewd in terms of the artwork as World's End Harem, but I would argue that outside of the artwork and just the content in it, which I heard probably does get a lot more lewd as you get into volume 2 and 3. The actual story itself and the characters are probably about the same. This is a very unique world though, which has some similarities to World's End Harem. This is why I'm putting both of them together in a certain sense. You do have a Japan / maybe world, which is kind of, the hierarchy is definitely in the female's favor. There was this gate that opened up that basically took you to another dimension. This is a dimension which is just full of like things that can kill you. And there's also these things called peaches, which you're not really introduced to too much in volume 1, but they do tell you about it a little bit. But if consumed by a female, they get a power. Very useful, strong power. But males get absolutely nothing. So I think that's why there is definitely a bit of a hierarchy, and that stems from everywhere in the normal world. There's the normal world, and then you do have this kind of outside world where gates sometimes pop up randomly, and then you could also kind of go in and out, I think, if you have those powers, pretty easily. But issues arrive when our main character has a gate suddenly open up on him, and I don't mean like you see a gate in front of you and you can just walk inside and walk out. No, a gate is in like you are teleported, everything in that area is teleported to this crazy dimension. Our main character is saved by, I would say, I guess the other main character / possible love interest, and essentially to win this battle that they're in, he has to subject himself to being the slave to the other main character. And I guess people naturally have a bit of power within them, and when he agrees to this, he is able to then unleash this power where he turns into this kind of crazy beast and is able to, well, win the battle. But at the end of the battle, you do see some of this down badness happening, where the character that came in to save our main character and then enslave him, which technically it's enslavement, but it's also like he's totally down with it. It's more of a partnership. It's just kind of using that word they use in the manga, which was actually changed from the original title. The original title was Chained Slave. I can see in the West why you wouldn't want that as a title, especially with the US's history. But the main character who turned into this beast won the battle. His reward after these battles, depending on how much he did and how much he did to help win, the other character who enslaved him essentially is like has to do whatever he wants, which isn't even something that he vocalizes. It's just something in his mind, like it's just known. I don't know exactly how it works, but there's a connection between them two where she can't even control herself, so she just has to essentially do whatever it is. And the first thing is just kissing, and then it goes from there, and then apparently it goes even more from there. And although I say she doesn't have control, at the same time she's also totally down with it. At any point I think either of them can like break the contract. It's not even a real contract. I don't know exactly. There's some loopholes, I think, but I do think this is a very interesting manga. I have no idea where it goes and how bad it gets in terms of some stuff, but I don't think it's for everyone. But if what I was talking about does interest you, then go ahead and pick it up. I will keep you guys updated on how it goes, but I thought it was interesting enough to at least put into this video something I'm reading lately. Next we have Rooster Fighter. This I've talked about in my manga haul, I've talked about other places, I've talked about on stream. I really enjoy Rooster Fighter. I don't know, at first I didn't know if I was gonna like it. I picked it up more so just as like almost a gag manga because I knew nothing about it. But let me tell you, the artwork goes crazy. The rooster goes crazy. The story is still a bit episodic in a sense. I'm not sure where it's gonna go. I don't know how many volumes it's gonna continue down. I don't even know how many volumes are out in Japan right now, maybe like 2 or 3. But it's essentially One Punch Man if Saitama was a rooster, which, yeah, it sounds ridiculous, and it is. It's not Monster, it's not Berserk, it's not these series that really make you think like, oh man, like yeah, this was such a amazing thing that happened. No, not necessarily, but you're watching a rooster just absolutely destroy kaiju. It's, you know, it's kind of similar to Dragon Ball in a sense too, like the original Dragon Ball where you got little Goku who's like, oh, this thing's not gonna be able to fight me, you can't, you know, he's not gonna be able to beat me in battle. And then you see the antagonist or whoever Goku was fighting just absolutely knocked out, destroyed. There's really not much more to say about this series. The last, I think it was the last chapter, introduced technically a new character, and it was a very sad and wholesome moment. I loved it. Definitely my favorite chapter. Definitely sealed the deal in terms of like, yes, I do want to keep picking this up. I do want to keep collecting this. But at the same time, we're going to have to see how Volume 2 goes to make a real determination. Now, thought-provoking manga. This is actually a good lead way. We have Emanon. Emanon is 3 volumes in English. I think technically in total it's 4 volumes, although it was canceled by the magazine, so it was never actually finished. 4 volumes, I think the 4th volume is in like French and Japanese, but definitely not in English. Emanon is about this girl who essentially has like, how do you describe it? She's had her memory for like 6 billion years, or a couple billion years, whatever it is. And she has remembered every single life she's ever had, which is kind of crazy. So she remembers everything from being a prehistoric cell to evolving into an actual person. And the story starts off with her, I believe, maybe in the, I think late 60s, so 1960s, the story begins. And essentially what happens is every time she has a child, so let's say she's living her life and, you know, she becomes a certain age, there's this feeling she gets where she kind of feels like, okay, it's time to, you know, pass into another life, it's time to have a kid. So, you know, historically she has gotten pregnant, she has a kid, and then all of her memories, her entire life, everything is transferred into the baby once it's born. So that baby is the new Emanon, if that makes any sense. And the mom, who was, you know, was Emanon before she had the baby, is essentially this like husk of life and loses all memories, doesn't have any memories, and kind of just gets by. We see a couple different examples, which is really, really interesting through the 3 volumes. And this manga it's quite hard to explain. It's extremely thought-provoking. I thought it's really good, even though it unfortunately got canceled by the magazine in Japan. I think the 3 volumes that are out in English are worth picking up and are worth discussing. I think there was a ton left on the table, unfortunately, at the end of volume 3. But at the same time, I feel like the end of volume 3 was probably one of the most wholesome moments, which you don't tend to see a whole lot of wholesome moments in this series. And I'm not necessarily mad with just having that 3rd volume. But yeah, I would definitely check this out. We see multiple lives of Emanon, and it's just really cool. The next volume we have is the YKK Deluxe Edition Omnibus. Yokohama, I don't know how to pronounce the rest. This is a really interesting manga though that focuses on this robot cafe owner. So she owns this like coffee cafe, which technically she's not like, well, she is the owner because the original owner is just MIA. This is like this a very odd post-apocalyptic world, but it's not the post-apocalyptic world which you might be thinking. It's more of like there was this environmental disaster that happened which just seems like it wiped out a lot of humanity, but it's not this like waste, barren, like, it's not like some of these other series, you know what I mean? There's not a bunch of like fighting, looting, no, it's actually pretty peaceful. It's a slice of life. And as you can tell, there's not really a whole lot of visitors to this cafe, but each chapter has been really interesting. It's slow, it's not super fast paced. You're gonna read it, you're just gonna hang out, enjoy the story. I read it first online, a couple chapters, and then I got the volumes. Like, you know, I'm really enjoying this. I do like the side characters. I like the older man and the grandson. You also, as you're reading this, you know there's a lot more stuff that can happen within this manga. This is a bit of an older series. I don't know quite as old, but it does kind of, sometimes the artwork gives me like kind of Toriyama or even Tezuka to a certain point, but I wouldn't say it's like Tezuka's art. I'd say it's better than Tezuka's art. Like I mentioned, each chapter does seem a bit episodic in the sense of like, I don't know if there's this like large overlying plot line of like everything matters, but you do see certain scenes where, I don't know, it's just like, it's very wholesome, it's very chill. It's not gonna be the fastest thing like I mentioned, but I'm enjoying it. So, next series which I want to talk about is Kowloon, which I've talked about on Instagram, and I've also talked about in my manga haul. My basis for this is I did not really enjoy the story up until the last like couple pages where the twist comes in, and some things do make sense, so I have been pushing this more. I did enjoy this. I did enjoy this volume, and essentially it's about this also possibly kind of post-apocalyptic setting, not within the city but maybe outside of the city. There's still a lot of unanswered questions, but this is actually the back of the book, which is like a housing structure. This entire thing is like a housing structure, and this is how the city is structured. So obviously there's some more stuff we have not learned about in this one volume, but essentially it's Kowloon Kowloon generic romance, which, you know, there is a romance in this, but that's not really what the exciting thing about this volume is. The romance, I didn't really like. The 2 main characters, a love interest, they're both realtors, so they're both real estate agents. The main character is this cigarette smoking character who's just kind of hanging out and trying to grab the attention of the other character, who's the male character, who likes hanging out with our main character, and they go out and eat a lot, but he also like doesn't seem to really care about her at all. He's not down with any of her advances, and he looks like he has absolutely no interest in pursuing her. He also seemed a little wound tight, and there's definitely some stuff you don't really know about him. Like there's maybe some stuff behind the scenes going on, and it's basically like that the entire volume until you get to the last like maybe 5 to 10 pages at most, where the main character sees something. I have no idea where this manga is going. It's definitely not going to be a generic romance. This title is definitely playing with you. It's not a generic romance at all. I am very excited to see where it's going, and I wish I could explain more about this twist without spoiling it, but it would absolutely spoil the volume, and I'm not about that. But yeah, even if you're not into your typical romance manga, I think this would be interesting for you to read, because once again, first of all, there's not much romance in this entire volume, and number 2, I don't know if this series is even going to be about romance much. There's some really dark stuff I think happening towards volume 2, and then we have the manga, which I'm the most excited to talk about just because this is the manga that I've absolutely binged the most in August. I binged 8 omnibuses in this month, and it is GANTZ. All the good stuff I heard about this series is 100% true, and I 100% agree with. This manga is brutal, the artwork is fantastic, the characters are fantastic, the action is fantastic. The story, it's not the most thought-provoking. Oh, it is thought-provoking, I'm not gonna say that. But it's not the best, like, the most amazing story you're ever gonna hear. My true recommendation for this is to read 3 volumes. If you don't enjoy 3 volumes, or even a volume or 2, if you're not enjoying it, you're probably not gonna like GANTZ, because it doesn't change a whole lot. It's a lot of it is about these situations they're put in, these fights that they're put in, and man, it is so good. The way that Hiroya Oku writes these characters, I mean, it is 100% on Urasawa level in terms of character writing. It is just so goddamn good. And the difference between this and Urasawa is Hiroya Oku does not make a lot of text-heavy chapters, so you can fly through this. I have absolutely flown through this. It's very quick reads. I mean, you can pretty much read an omnibus in not that much time. So there's nights where, you know, I've gone through an entire omnibus. There's nights where I've gone probably an omnibus and a half, and I am so interested to see where this ends. I've just recently gotten to probably the biggest fight in GANTZ, where I think there's a whole movie that's made on it, a whole like live action movie. And essentially, to break it down real quick, if you don't know anything about GANTZ, we have our main character who ends up dying at the beginning of the volume, like first couple pages. It's not a spoiler. And he's sent into this room with one other person, and essentially they find out that they're not technically dead, but to earn their freedom, they have to fight and not die. If they die in these battles, they are fully dead. There's no, you know, that's it. But we learned that these battles are not as it seems, and they end up being a lot more difficult, and each one we see becomes more and more and more difficult. This manga is also not afraid of killing side characters. There's not a lot of side character plot armor, so that is super exciting. That is something that I love with stories. I am on Omnibus 8, so whatever the math is in volumes, I think there's gonna be 12 omnibuses in total, so I haven't read 9 yet. I do own it. I'm waiting probably till 10 comes out, and then I'll read 9 and 10, and then I'll probably read 11 and 12 when both those come out. But man, GANTZ has been an absolute trip, and I would not feel bad about getting the omnibuses as long as you read them and don't just like spread them wide open. You'll be totally fine. They're not gonna crease. I wouldn't worry about that. But if you do read them super wide and you're not like careful with them, then they will crease. But yeah, GANTZ has been an absolute ride, and I cannot wait to finish it out. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know some people want to see some more videos where I'm kind of talking about manga I'm reading and talking about the story and what I like about it and stuff like that, instead of just kind of going through a haul real quick. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, let me know down in the comments so I can continue to make these as the months go on. You know, it's basically like manga reading logs. It's just I may not title it exactly that, and I may not talk about every volume I've read this month or whatever month I make the video in. But yeah, it's gonna be it for this video. I will catch you guys later. Peace out.